repairs. So being a landlord and being a tenant and being an agent, sometimes, unfortunately, you can get a bad agent. You can get a landlord that doesn't want to spend any money, and you can get a tenant that's just completely unrealistic on their expectation. So talking this morning about repairs, talking about getting repairs done on your place. Burge, what do you reckon about these repairs?
Yeah, it's morning minutes with myself, Michael Burge, and Mark Novak. Damaged goods. Alrighty, repairs are pretty important, hey? And the
most importantly, our Christmas party's tonight.
Yes, so 6:30.
Yeah.
Hang on, 6:30, 822 Pittwater Road, RSVP. I reckon it's going to be good. I reckon lots of people coming.
Sure RSVP. I think there's a good couple of hundred people coming along, and plenty of food. There is so much food, so make sure you don't have lunch, don't have dinner before you come. Come and eat, come and drink. Promise we're not going to talk business tonight.
Unless you guys want to talk business.
Yeah, we love talking business. No. So, okay, Michael, let's talk about a typical repair and a typical, how that works. So just to start from the top, so a landlord has a rental property. We manage the rental property. It could be commercial, could be residential.
Yep.
A tenant's renting the property and something goes wrong. The beautiful thing about renting a property is that you don't actually have to look after the repairs on the property unless there was malicious damage.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. For a tenant that you can just pick up the phone and stuff can get fixed for you. What's a typical repair? What's a reasonable turnaround time? What do they cost?
Yeah. So let's go through, and also the process as well. I think let's say, what about maybe like a big one would be the taps. I think I always hear the washers in the taps, or a block drain, or something along those lines. Good morning, Andrew.
Okay, so the tenant calls up. The tenant says, look, my taps are leaking. It's driving me nuts. My toilet's running. It's driving me nuts. Do they have to do it in writing with an agent?
Yes, so it has to be, that has to be in writing. So a lot of the time the property managers would request it in an email from the tenant. I believe an SMS is suffice as well, but it does have to be in writing, stating what's the issue and who they are. And then the next sort of step would be, because what's Mark, can an agent just go out there and send someone to fix it? Because I find a lot of the time the tenants sort of feel like if it doesn't get done straight away, like there can be a bit of a delay. What's a reasonable delay? If there is a reasonable delay, what's in that decision process once the tenant sends that request? Like what happens in the background, Mark?
Okay, well, there's two things. There's essential services. So they're things that a tenant needs to live in a property. That's got to be treated different to a general repair. It doesn't particularly mean it will get done quicker or longer, but it has to be definitely treated with kitty gloves if it's essential services. So essential services is if the tenant can't shower in the property, if the tenant can't eat in the property, if the tenant can't sleep in the property, that's essential services. So they've really got to be done same day. That with essential services, that's super important stuff. So with a landlord, you really can't be too tolerant or intolerant. You've got to get that done straight away. So the first thing we do, guys, is we ring the landlord and get instructions. So even if we've got a $500 it's okay to spend from the landlord, we will still make contact with the landlord and let them know what's happening, give them a solution and seek instructions.
Yeah, because I think a lot of the time when people get frustrated or angry in this process, it's that turnaround time from when they initial the request and something gets done as well. So, all right, leaking tap, send it out, and then what, the plumber would go out straight away to fix the issue or assess the issue. Sometimes this doesn't happen though. So is that because the landlord may not be answering their phone, or they are trying to push it onto the tenant? Where can that go wrong? Like,
look, unfortunately, these things are unexpected costs. So a lot, most of us are living on a budget. So it's pretty hard when something out of budget happens. So some landlords, really just need to find the lowest cost option or the zero cost option. Sometimes that takes time. So with essential services, the great news is plumbers, electricians, we've got this animal list of suppliers that we've been using for a very long time. Very well priced, very reliable. Those guys are pretty quick. But when it's something like, a curtain's broken or a blind's torn, it's a little bit harder to get someone out, and two, to get a landlord to understand that problem and fix it.
Okay, so let's go through maybe one like that. The curtain's broken and you sent the request off, and a week's passed or 2 weeks has passed. If it's not essential, or it's not really, it's more of a damage, and the owner just flat out says, no, I'm not fixing it, even though those curtains weren't damaged when you moved in. Can a landlord do that? Like, I can imagine there's some tenants out there that just keep pushing the boundaries, and they all, by the end, like, they're in there, and it's almost, the landlord feels they want to renovate an apartment. And so how far can a tenant push it in that sort of process?
Well, look, I think that everyone's got to understand there's the tradesperson is a fourth party. If we're getting quotation, there's a fifth party and a sixth party in there as well. So you're actually amalgamating a job that needs 6 people to move in the same direction to get the job done. Wow. So it's sort of, people sort of forget, they put the gun to the agent's head and say, why isn't the job done? But with tenants, I think, and the tenant doesn't understand that in the background that the agent's pedaling on it or running on a treadmill trying to get stuff done. So a good agent will always keep that tenant in check, in tow, and informed to say, hey, I just got the second quote in, I just got the third quote in, I just got the first quote in, I'm just waiting for instructions. And also with landlords, sometimes there's more than one. Sometimes, you know what I mean? So suddenly you got 8 people making part of this decision process. It's for one, menial repair.
So I reckon the biggest thing is definitely that communication as well. Through it. So what was I going to say? I had a mental blank. How much communication should the agent have with the owner, with the tenant? For example, let's say if they're looking to do something and the quotes come back and the price vary, would you as an agent advise the tenant on the pricing to give them a bit of understanding? Because some tenants may just say, I want the dishwasher. I want the dishwasher's not working. I want it fixed. They think it could be $100 fix, but actually it needs a whole new unit, which could be $3,000. But let's say that dishwasher was a bonus and not a part of the lease. And let's say the owner may not have that liquidity of cash to do it at the moment. So I think a lot of owners may say to an agent, I can't afford it. And instead of passing that on to the tenant, they may just say the landlord's not going to do it. And there's not much contest on.
Look, if you're going to rent the property out, and you've got products or services that you're offering when you rent that property out, you've got to, as a landlord, maintain those things. A rickety air conditioning unit is a great idea. You know those ones that used to pop into the windows? You opened your window up and it fitted right into there. Now, a lot of owners used to say, look, this is 20 years old. It's garbage. It's good. It works, but it doesn't work that well. Now, an owner's actually doing the tenant a favor, saying, look, I'm going to leave it here anyway. You can you can squeeze some juice out of it, but not that much. And a tenant is going, this is the worst air conditioning unit. I'm paying solid rent. Why do I have to suffer? So as an owner, it would be better to rip that air conditioning out, even if it still works, and throw it out. Rip that shit dishwasher out and throw it out, not supply it as part of the rent. And then you eliminated the problem. So, and that goes with old furniture and stuff like that. It's, old appliances, just get rid of them. So it's really, really important.
So for a tenant, and let's just say they've been sending the requests, trades have come out, but nothing's happening. What can a tenant do to to push things along. Like, how can a tenant know if it's a shitland, a slumlord, or a crap real estate agent? Like, what's some key things they can do or ask to find out? Because I've heard on occasions where something's gone wrong, and the tenants, the worst things happen. They've just said, I'm leaving the property, I'm giving notice because nothing gets done. And then it wasn't here, of course. And then the owner was like, if I knew, I would have done that. If it was that bad, I would have done that. So what's a good way a tenant can know that things are getting to the landlord and it is on them and it's not a crap real estate agent?
Process of elimination, communication. Yeah. If the tenant's not getting constant communication back from the agent, if the tenant's leaving 2-3 messages, not getting a response, if the tenant's just not hearing from the agent, garbage agent. You know, even if the landlord's not doing the work or delaying, it doesn't mean with the agent should be. Now, there is a golden rule that we use as property managers in real estate, and that's never give the landlord the tenant's number and never give the tenant the landlord's number, because it always ends up in a bung fight, and the landlord can possibly make representations that stuff them up in a tribunal. So what a tenant can do, which is a really powerful tool, which is probably a piece we can do, is dob in.
Okay, Luke. Yes, big night ahead. Thanks for sharing the post, guys. And that goes for anyone who would love you to share the content. Tag anyone that this may suit. You may know a buddy out there who's renting, who's struggling to get some repairs done. Tag him in it, call us, let's help. Share the post.
So I think being a dibber dobber as a tenant can actually work pretty well for you, because I call it the hammer, which is tribunal. If people bring in the tribunal, it's funny because tenants will sometimes turn to social media, or they'll invest all their time in whinging. It is very swift and very harsh to bring the hammer in and do tribunal.
Okay, there's the biggest tip for any tenant, especially if it's justified that something is not getting done. You can, so basically what Mark's referencing is you can lodge a claim with tribunal. I believe it's
$55.
$55, which will, so you've...
Consumer Tenancy Tribunal, I think they've just changed their name.
And what will happen there, you identify the agent, the agency and the agent personally. So that scares the shit out of agents, because they've just been put on blast on a formal document, the property address, and it identifies. Does that automatically go to the landlord as well, Mark, or through the agent to the landlord?
Through the agent to the landlord. It's basically, if you don't turn up, it's a fair request. It's an auto loss. So you would just, if the tenant makes a claim against the landlord, and there's no response and no attendance at the tribunal, providing it's a reasonable request, it's an auto win for the tenant, an auto loss for the landlord. I'll give you a perfect example. It isn't necessarily real estate. Has anyone ever got a Vodafone bill where they start debt collection?
Let's just say yes, I have. Just go with it.
Optus, Vodafone, Telstra's not as bad. Now, once these guys put a debt against your name, you will not get a home loan. You are stuffed. But trying to get some sort of reason out of these guys is really hard. So I walked into a Vodafone store, and this is relating back to real estate repairs because I'm talking about tribunal. I went into a Vodafone store and I got the family on a pack, and then I connected. And as you know, Michael, we couldn't do this session. This session's done by 4G, a 4G Telstra, and that's what I use on my end. And 4G Vodafone could not give me the connection that I needed. And the guy in the store said, "Look, that's cool. See how you go. It's 30 days. You can swap it over. And we won't charge you. That's cool. Like, it's 30 days. And I'm like, okay, thank you. Plugged in all the phones. Unfortunately, was getting a lot of dropouts. Couldn't run this morning show. Went back and said, dude, I'm switching to back to Telstra. I tried to save some money. I screwed myself. And he said, yeah, that's cool. You have to call the head office. Call the head office, and got the merry-go around. Short and long of it is they sent me a bill for $1,400 saying you haven't paid. Debt collection started about 2 months ago. So I'm calling the guy from the store saying, buddy, what are you doing? I'm calling the guys in Vodafone saying, what are you doing? No one knows nothing. So I'm saying the debt collectors, like these guys, everyone's on crack. There's a 30-day policy. Debt collectors saying, not our problem. We're enforcing the debt. $55 in tribunal last Wednesday. Sorted by Friday. So what I've been trying to work out
is
so what I've been trying to work out for 3 months. Now another thing I did is I told Vodafone I wasn't going to take my foot off their neck until they gave me the $55 that I had to spend in tribunal as a credit back as well, and they did.
Wow.
So
that's amazing. That's probably the best tip, strategy, hack in the strategy that you can do
good hack.
To resolve something as well. That can apply to what? To a tradesman doing work for you that doesn't work. Anything is anything. So
and you know what? This is a great country. This is a great country. This is a fair country. So if something's not fair, a lot of people just take the wrath and say, oh yeah, that's life. But you don't have to. So as a business person, I would have said, okay, look, it's going to cost me more than $1,400 of my time to make all these calls back to Vodafone, to get all this resolved back to Vodafone, to get all this happening, or $55, kaboom, and then it was fixed. So with tenant repairs, I'm not shy, I'm not scared of a tribunal, of a tenant starting a tribunal case against a landlord, because one, we do our job properly, so we don't have to cover our ass and be worried about stuff like this. And two, this is a fair forum. It's the most diplomatic forum to actually have. So if a tenant wants to bring in fairness this up, it may well help us explain that to the landlord, that Mr. and Mrs. Landlord, this is now really serious. These are, these are essential items that the tenant needs to get fixed for the property. You will lose in a tribunal situation. So $55 tribunal, slap.
Now let's talk about whingy tenants. Like, I think we've hammered the potential slumlord and the shit agent a good way around that. So how can a landlord know what's reasonable, how often, or a whingy tenant? So would the landlord just have to rely on their agent? What's some good indicators that they can go in? Let's say you've rented a property to a new tenant. It wasn't a new property, but it was a well-kept property. Then within a week, something comes up. Then another week, something comes up. What's a way to manage that? Because I think a lot of the time it could be managed the expectation of the tenant as well. They may not have rented before and they feel like anything get replaced, or if they don't like it, something happens. I think
and you got to manage expectations of a tenant. You got to manage expectations of a landlord. That's at the title of this morning's, and expectations of an agent, I guess, as well. But I think the great thing about using an agency like us is, with the amount of properties we have under management, we're a pretty good barometer to say, no, you're a kook, or no, this is a fair request. You see, some agents only manage 50 properties in their region or 100 properties in their region. They don't have this repair happen before. Oh my God, I've never heard of this. We have heard of every single repair you could ever bloody imagine. So then, do you know what I mean? So but we're managing 1,500 properties. That's a benefit to our landlord, because when something goes wrong, we've got that experience across that portfolio to say, Mr. and Mrs. Landlord, it's okay. We've had this happen before, and this is how you short circuit it. The bomb doesn't have to go off, guys. The bomb doesn't have to go off. We can short circuit, defuse the bomb before it goes off. But you have to have defused the bomb before to do it really, really well.
Correct. Oh, Mark, and I was just thinking of one then as well, which is a huge one. Now, let's say you've got it resolved or agreed for something to be done and the work to be carried out. As an agent, as a landlord, who you have go to the property, can be very important, and not just for the actual work they're carrying out. That person needs to be briefed. How many times, Mark, have you heard of someone's had a tradie through the property and the tradie has just probably said too much or disclosed information or he's just made it worse. Like it goes, oh, this is dodgy, it should have been fixed years ago, or I've been out here patching this up 10 times now. Or just, I find a lot of the time when now that another fourth party comes into the property, it can make it worse as well. So I think it's very important for your agent to have a very good trade to go out there for one, but also understand the lines of communication that they're either that they have to go to the agent and the agent only, or because I've had times where a tradie has gone to a property and then they've told the tenant a story, and then the tenants jump to conclusions, and then they call the agent saying, this is dodgy, it's going to burn down. I think that's very important.
I'll explain this to everyone really easily. Your job is maintaining $1 million asset for the client. Yeah. It's not to fix the tap. Yes. Right? Because if it's a tap fixer, there's plenty of people that can fix taps in this world. So I think that landlords have to be really conscious about that. This is $1 million asset. Now that lovely tenant is actually, believe it or not, paying for your $1 million asset. So your tenant must be treated well. Your landlord must be treated well. Your asset must be treated well. But people can come in and piss on that asset. They can piss on it. They can actually very easily put an odor through the whole asset.
They can literally piss on the asset everywhere.
No, but they can, and that tenant and that can happen with lack of experience, like a bad trade that you're talking about. That asset can be affected. So it's really, really important that it's done well. And again, if your agent's experienced and knows what they're doing, unfortunately, our industry has a heritage of employing people that are not experienced to manage properties. It has a heritage of employing people to manage property that don't own property themselves. That gets up. How can you be a great property manager if you haven't managed a property for yourself, or you don't own a property? I think you have to have gone through the throes, the experience, the financing, the heartache, the sweat, the deposit, all that stuff to get it, to put yourself in a landlord's shoe, to do a good job for that landlord.
Well, look at it this way. If you had $1 million car and you were going to let someone drive it, you would probably treat them pretty well. You're trusting them with your $1 million car. And that's like, as that goes for a landlord, how they should treat their tenants, how they should act. Because if they're in your car, they're in your car and they ask for something and you just spit in their face, they're in your car, they're in your asset, and that's the exact same. And I think people forget this as well. They're in your property, they're in your $1 million asset, and it can really, really deter the value. So treat them like that as well. If anything, go over the top to get shit done. How easy is it to hit a curb in a car and you damage your rim? Same as a property. Drop something on the carpet and it's got to be replaced as well.
And people are cool. If you look at how, we're managing sort of 3,000 landlords and tenants, right? If you look at how much time we would be in the tribunal seeking orders against tenants, I would say we would be in the tribunal physically. We would be lucky to be in there once every 3 months. And we're out of 3,000 landlords and tenants, we're in there once every 3 months. Now, you will also get agents that will do not a good job. They will sometimes enjoy the power, and they will be in the tribunal every 2 weeks getting orders against tenants. So I think if you treat people well, life just becomes easier as a property manager. As a landlord, I personally own a property where the tenant has a cafe with no air conditioning, right? So I couldn't afford to put it in when I bought it because I've had bills. And then when I could afford it, I was like, dude, here's some air conditioning out of nowhere. Now, that's just, you know, I reckon there's a bit of like, you put good stuff out there, good stuff comes back. Do you know what I mean? I don't expect anything from the tenant now, but I'm just saying, you know, you look after people, you know,
100%.
it's less troubles.
And what was I going to say? Mental blank. It was going to be a good thing.
How do you know that when you're choosing a real estate agent though? You wouldn't
Yeah,
know.
that's true.
As a tenant, you wouldn't know if you're going into trouble for free motoring, rentals wise. As a landlord, you wouldn't know if you're going into trouble for free motoring. You've got brand.
And the best thing, the most important thing is pick up the phone. I know it's got to be in writing for the repairs, but a bomb can be diffused, I find, with phone calls talking about it. So we did say at the beginning, communication is key, but I also believe a lot of property managers in the industry, they hide behind emails, and this topic, repairs, is probably, besides arrears, I reckon is one of the most important, and it's one of the most, it can really escalate very, very nasty, be very nasty if it's not handled correctly, from the smallest issue to the largest. And a lot of the time, it can work in the tenant's favor if the landlord hasn't done it. So I believe tribunal that's someone's home. And whenever something's not right or livable, it's going to go in the person's favor of who's being impacted. And that's generally the tenant living in the property. So I think as much as it's got to be backed up in writing, phone call, go meet them face to face, go meet the landlord at the property so they can see it, meet the tenant so they can describe what the issue is. Let's face it, it can't all be described in an email. So I think the biggest tip and what the best PMs do in the industry that I see is they make it very personable. They go to the property, they meet the tenants, they let them feel like they've been heard as well, and actually been in place.
And that's a wrap, dudes. That's a wrap. So, garbage agents, garbage tenants, garbage landlords. We cannot forget that it is $1 million or $500,000 an asset. We cannot forget this is a home for people. We cannot forget good old-fashioned manners and looking after people and good old-fashioned service. You get that right, it should just flow.
It's true. Alrighty, guys. Hope to see everyone at the Christmas party. Thank you.
Christmas party tonight. See you tonight.
Cheers. Bye.
Friends and family, come.